Hello, today I'm going to go over osmosis and salt regulation lecture. So I'm just briefly covering osmosis. That is a topic that that you can go into more detail and depth on, but we're just covering a very basic idea here. And we're gonna relate osmosis to animals that live in the ocean in a salty environment. All right, so first here I've got a diagram of osmosis, and what you see with osmosis is water is going to move into, so we're just talking about osmosis with water and salts. Water is going to move into an area where there's a higher concentration of salts. That's what all these dots are. The dots are the salt concentration. So in this particular cell, there's a higher concentration inside of the cell, so the water moves in and the cell gets bigger. In this middle one, it's an even amount or an even concentration between the outside of the cell and the inside of the cell. So water moves back and forth equally. The cell stays its same normal shape. It doesn't get bigger like in this one. And in this last one, the salt is concentrated on the outside of the cell. Less salt on the inside, a lower concentration. And so the water is going to move out towards the higher concentration of salt, just like it did over here. It moved in towards the higher concentration of salt. And when it does that, the cell is going to shrink because it's losing water. The water is just going one direction. All right, now the reason we're talking about this is because this happens to animals that live in the ocean. It's a salty environment, so water is going to generally want to move out of cells and into that salty environment of the ocean water. Osmosis is the movement of water attempting to equalize concentrations. Usually we are talking about water moving based on the concentration of salts in a cell. Water moves towards the high salt concentration. That's what I just talked about. This creates problems for all organisms trying to maintain an internal balance of water and salts. Fish in the ocean live in a very salty environment compared to freshwater fish. Now, freshwater fish are going to have the opposite problem, but we're not really going into that too much today. All right, so here it shows a comparison. We've got a marine fish, so one that lives in the saltwater, and a freshwater fish. And if you read through this, you can actually see all the different ways that they have to cope with this change, with trying to balance out where the water and the salts are. Saltwater and freshwater fish have different strategies for dealing with regulation. Fish in the ocean lose internal water to the sea because of osmosis. So here's our marine fish. Remember, the salt water of the ocean has a higher concentration of salt, so water moves towards that higher concentration of salt. So they're going to be losing water to the environment. So there's several things that they can do. The salinity of the ocean water is higher than the salinity in their cells. To counter this, they drink lots of water, but must also use strategies to get rid of extra salt. So they drink a lot of water to compensate for the water that they're losing, but that water also has a lot of salt in it, so they have to be able to get rid of that salt. And freshwater fish are going to do the opposite thing, which, again, you can see here and read about what happens there. But there's other strategies. This is just what fish do. But some other creatures have different ways of coping with that salty environment. So here I have a jellyfish. Jellyfish are a little unique. They are called osmoconformers, meaning they passively change their internal salinity concentration to match the seawater concentration. So a jellyfish, what it's gonna do is whatever the salinity is in the ocean water, that ocean water is going to pass through into their cells, into their body, and it's going to be that same salinity. So it's going to keep both internal and external levels the same. So slight changes in salinity is fine because the jellyfish just goes to whatever salinity level is in its surroundings. Osmoconformers. All right, then we've got here a sea turtle. And a thing about sea turtles is they have these what looks like tears coming from their eyes on kind of like on a regular or constant basis. And that's an effort to deal with the extra salt environment of the ocean. Sea turtles drink ocean water, but must get rid of the extra salt. They have evolved special glands near their eyes that secrete salty tears. The glands work with the kidneys to reduce salt concentrations in the body. So again, it's just another way, kind of like the fish, it's taking in water from drinking ocean water, but that ocean water has a lot of salt, so we have to have a way to get rid of it. And then even down here, I've got plants. Now, I'm not talking about plants that are growing in the water. This is gonna be plants that are growing along the water. So salt marsh plants are exposed to a lot of salt in the soil and a lot of salt from the water at high and low tide. Plant cells also have to deal with osmosis in their cells. They have cells shrink or grow because of concentration differences. So just like the animal cells, the plant cells can also get larger or smaller to a certain extent. Not exactly the same as animal cells, which can grow and shrink a little bit more. Some marsh plants have evolved similar methods to turtles, namely secreting extra salt through glands. And the salt will build up. It almost looks like sweat, like the plant starts to release some of this salt from glands. And then it dries and it leaves this crust of salt on the outside of the plant. That's how it's coping with this very high salinity environment. Okay, I hope that helps. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you very much.